The word locked was the last thing I expected to see next to my own name. It pulsed in red across the touchscreen at the city property records office, the letters harsh and final under the buzzing fluorescent lights. Behind me, someone shifted impatiently in line, but everything around me blurred. All I could focus on was the line beneath my unit number. Title status, locked thub and transaction pending. I swallowed and forced my voice to work. That can't be right. My fingertip tapped the glass again as if a second touch might fix a glitch. I typed my name, my unit number, hit search. Same result. Same red warning, locked, next. The clerk at the glass window called, bored until he caught sight of the screen in front of me. His posture straightened almost instantly. Ma'am, you checking on unit Penthouse C? He asked, leaning forward. Yes, I said, keeping my tone as flat as I could. I own that penthouse outright. I'm just verifying the title. He frowned, fingers moving over his keyboard, eyes scanning whatever appeared on his monitor. Why today specifically? He asked. There's already a sale process under review on this one. The room seemed to tilt. Outwardly, I was still, one hand on the edge of the counter. Inwardly, my stomach dropped straight through the floor. The penthouse wasn't just an apartment. It was every promotion, every weekend I'd worked through, every time I chose overtime instead of holidays. $950,000 of concrete proof that I had built a life no one could take from me. My parents' last call flashed through my mind with ugly clarity. My mother's breaking voice, my father's stern, rehearsed phrases. Your sister is drowning in debt. Family has to step up. You're the only one who can help. I'd said no. For once, I'd held the line. Now the word locked stared back at me like their answer. The clerk cleared his throat. Says here, seller, my name, buyer, Harborline Investments, LLC. He glanced at me like he expected me to nod. That's impossible, I said. My voice sounded almost calm to my own ears. I never signed anything. I'm not selling my place. He scrolled further down, eyebrows knitting. Well, the system shows a power of attorney on file. That's how this got this far. He turned the screen slightly, as if to prove he wasn't making it up. Your father, Mr. Father's name, is listed as your authorized agent. Without that document, this title couldn't have been locked for transfer. For a second, I couldn't even find words. My father, the same man who used to joke that my fancy apartment in the sky was wasted on someone who never invited the family over. The same man who told me, more than once, that property belonged to the bloodline, not the individual. Can I see it? I managed. He hesitated, then hit print. The machine beside him coughed out a few pages. He slid a preliminary summary under the glass to me. My name was there, spelled perfectly, my old address underneath. But the contact email, in neat black text, was wrong. It was my mother's Gmail address, the one she used to send chain prayers and family gossip, not mine. A pressure started behind my eyes, that peculiar mix of rage and disbelief. They hadn't just pressured me this time. They'd gone around me. I scanned further down. There, in small font, was the notarization line. My supposed signature, a date. I stared at it, and my blood ran cold. That week, I hadn't been anywhere near the city. I had been 12 time zones away, in Singapore, living out of conference rooms and hotel lobbies, running a product launch so intense I still woke up thinking about it. Ma'am, the clerk said softly, as if he'd caught the exact moment the realization hit. When a title is marked locked to the transaction pending, it means a buyer has already deposited funds in escrow. If nobody contests it before the closing date, the transfer goes through automatically. He pointed at a line on the summary. Closing is scheduled for 72 hours from now. 72 hours, 3 days. And on paper, I would no longer own the one thing my parents had never helped me with and never stopped resenting. I let out a slow breath, forcing my hand not to shake as I folded the printout. I never gave anyone power of attorney, I said, more to myself than to him. Then louder, I need to see exactly what's on that document. As he nodded and turned back to his screen, one question settled, hard and cold, in the center of my chest. How had my own parents managed to get legal authority over property I had never shared with them at all? People always assume that if your own parents cross a line like this, it must have come out of nowhere. It didn't. I'm in my mid 30s, first generation, anything in my family. First to graduate, first to land a real job, first to make more than survival money. I clawed my way up from unpaid internships and roommates and dollar store dinners into a high paying role in tech. My younger sister Lena took a different path, if you can call falling into addiction, impulsive spending, and a carousel of bad relationships a path. In our house, the roles were fixed. I was the responsible one, the one who understood money, which meant I was expected to absorb every crisis. Lena was the fragile one, the innocent victim of circumstances. When she tanked another semester, it was because professors were unfair. When she maxed out a credit card, it was because no one taught her. Every mess she made, my parents turned to me with the same look. Fix this. The financial manipulation started early. In my early 20s, when I was still figuring out rent and ramen, my parents took out a small loan in my name just to build your credit score. They signed everything themselves. I found out months later when collection calls started. They had defaulted without telling me. When I confronted them, waving the statements, my mother burst into tears about how hard it is to be parents, and my father's face hardened. "You're really going to count pennies over family," he said. "We did it for you." Years later, when Lena's gambling finally had a name, they came again. This time they wanted me to co-sign her consolidation loan. "You make six figures," my father said, like it was an accusation. "What's the risk?" I said no. I was tired of cleaning up fires I hadn't started. Within a week, my aunt was calling to ask why I'd become so cold and obsessed with money. My parents had done the rounds, telling everyone money had ruined me, so I pulled away. I rebuilt my credit from the wreckage they'd made. I worked 70-hour weeks, slept under my desk during launches, skipped vacations, and eventually, I bought the Penthouse. Only my name on the deed. No co-owner, no co-signer. For the first time, something big in my life couldn't be stolen by someone else's bad decisions. I never gave my parents keys. I blamed strict building policies and insurance rules and let them stay offended. The department shifted something they could feel but not name. At family gatherings, they bragged about me, our genius child, the one with the $1 million view. And in the next breath, my mother would sigh that I didn't share, that success had made me selfish. Looking back, the warning signs weren't subtle. Over the past year, my father asked for copies of my ID more than once. "For emergency contact forms," he said, "in case we need to sign for a parcel." My mother pushed to be added as an alternate contact on my utilities and building file because you travel so much, honey. At one barbecue, I walked back into the kitchen and caught them holding my driver's license under good light, taking photos with my mother's phone. They laughed, said they were just proud parents who wanted to show relatives what a real professional ID looks like. I shrugged off the unease. "They're manipulative," I told myself, "but not criminals." That line, it turns out, existed only in my head. Back at the property office, I pushed that history down and focused on what was in front of me. "I need a full copy of the power of attorney," I told the clerk, and whatever ID was used with it. He nodded, accustomed to bureaucracy. He clicked around, then said he'd email me a PDF and burn a copy to a CD for your records. While the files processed, he swung his monitor slightly so I could see the scanned pages. There it was. On the last page of the POE, under a dense paragraph granting my father the right to sell, mortgage, lease, or otherwise encumber my penthouse, sat my alleged signature. My name looping where I usually printed, the letters nearly right and yet not. To a stranger, it would look like mine. To me, it felt like looking at my own face, badly drawn. My heart stumbled in my chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an imitation. He clicked to the attachments. A notarized affidavit popped up, my name in the text, stating that I was unavailable due to extended overseas assignment, and therefore granting my father power of attorney to handle all matters concerning the penthouse. Under it, a scan of my driver's license, my photo, my number. But the address line had been altered. The font was a hair off, the spacing wrong. Instead of my penthouse, it listed my parents' house as my primary residence. Disgust and a grim, eerie clarity washed over me together. This wasn't them stumbling into something shady for Lena. This was methodical. They had been collecting the pieces for month-side 2 poppies, contact info, signature samples like stocking a toolkit. I pulled out my phone and, without asking, started taking photos of the screen. Each shot captured the document edges, the date and time in the corner of the monitor. Evidence of how the system saw me. I asked for a certified copy, wrote down the case number, the notary's name, everything the clerk would give me. He hesitated before sliding the receipt over. "There's already a buyer, you know," he said quietly. "Escrow is with Harborline Title. If they don't hear anything different, they'll complete the sale based on this file." I walked out of the office into harsh daylight with the printout burning in my hand, one thought cutting through the noise. If the title company treated this forgery as real, the system would erase me and my home like we had never existed together at all. My next stop was obvious. I wasn't going home. I was going to the people holding the money and to whoever oversaw that notary's stamp. The title company's office looked exactly like every other corporate lobby I'd ever walked through. Glass doors, neutral carpet, bland art on the walls that could have been anywhere. It was the kind of place where transactions just flowed, where people signed and smiled and left with folders. I pushed open the door with the property office printout folded in my hand, feeling like I was walking into an operating room where I was the only one who knew the patient was bleeding out. "Hi. Welcome," the receptionist said automatically, eyes already flicking to her screen. "Do you have an appointment? I need to speak with whoever is handling the sale of Unit Penthouse at Harborview," I said, sliding my ID and the title summary across the counter. "I'm the owner." She started with that polite, vague smile people reserve for walk-ins asking questions, but as she scanned the paper, her expression tightened. Her gaze moved from the unit number to my name to the ID in front of her. She picked up the phone. "One moment. I'll get the closing officer on this file." A few minutes later, a woman in a navy blazer appeared. "M's my last name. I'm Anita Patel, the closing officer on Penthouse at Sea. Why don't you come with me?" She led me down a hallway into a small conference room with a fox, wood table, and a stack of neatly labeled folders. I sat, placing my ID on the table like I was offering evidence. She opened one of the folders, flipped through several pages, and then slid a copy of the purchase agreement closer to herself. "Okay." She began, voice professional. "So, our records show a sale in process. Buyer, Harborline Investments, LLC. Seller you, via power of attorney to your father, Mr. Father's name." She held my ID up next to the file, comparing. "May I?" I nodded. She studied my signature on my license, then the signature on the power of attorney, then back again. I watched her cadence slow, tiny pauses between each page turn. "These signatures," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "Our file shows your father signing under a valid POA. We did receive a notarized document authorizing him to act. But something is off. Let me check something." She stood and excused herself for a moment. When she returned, she wasn't alone. A man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a badge clipped to his belt walked in, carrying a tablet. "My last name, I'm David Lewis, in-house counsel and senior underwriter." He sat across from me, opened the tablet, and pulled up a scanned image of the power of attorney. M's. "Patel tells me you're saying you never granted this authority." "I didn't," I said. "I was out of the country the week this was supposedly signed. I have emails, flight records, everything." He nodded slowly. "All right, let me explain how this usually works. When we accept a POA in a high-value real estate transaction, we're supposed to verify the notary's commission. And in some cases, we do an independent call back to the principal, the person granting the power." He tapped the tablet, pulling up a digital note. "We have a log here that a verification call was completed. To this number." He turned the screen so I could see. The contact was labeled Honor Mobile. And next to it was my mother's number. A hot, bitter mix of anger and a twisted kind of relief surged through me. They'd followed a process. My parents had simply stepped into the space where I was supposed to exist and answered as if they were me. They hadn't needed to hack the system, they'd just impersonated me inside it. Lewis continued, so on our end, a staff member called this number, asked to confirm the POA, and received a yes. That's why this file moved forward. He opened another image, the notary block on the POA, complete with stamp and scribbled signature. Now we're going to look at the notary. He opened a browser and navigated to the state's online notary database. Typing in the commission number from the stamp, he waited, then frowned. Interesting, he said softly. This commission expired 6 months before the date on your POA. He clicked again, bringing up the notary's official signature sample. Side by side, the difference was obvious. The one on my document was heavier, clumsier, like someone had tried to approximate it from memory. Signature mismatch, he said, tapping the screen. This combination, expired commission and inconsistent signature, makes this notarization highly suspicious. For a heartbeat, I felt vindicated. Then he flipped back to the transaction summary on his tablet, and my fleeting relief evaporated. Here's the complication, he said. The sale is already pretty far along. Buyer's funds have been wired into escrow. All contingencies have been cleared in our system. Closing is scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m., so on paper, as of now, it shows seller. You via POA. Buyer. Harborline Investments, status, ready to close. The phrase, on paper, hit me harder than I expected. On paper, I was already halfway erased from my own home. Legally, Lewis went on record, you appear to have authorized this transaction. Unless we have clear, documented evidence of fraud, we are obligated to proceed or risk breach of contract claims from the buyer. We can't just cancel a sale because someone walks in and says, I didn't mean it. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. So what would you need to put a hold on the closing? He looked me straight in the eye. We need a formal, written fraud affidavit from you, sworn and signed. Any documentation proving you were not present or aware of this POA. Travel records, work logs, anything. And ideally, some corroboration from an official body. A complaint filed with the State Notary Commission, a report to law enforcement, or a real estate fraud unit. Once we have that, we can justify halting the transaction and notifying all parties. A mess. Patel pointed to a calendar on the wall. Today is Tuesday, she said quietly. Closing is Friday at 10. If we don't act before end of day tomorrow, our system automatically advances the file to ready for disbursement. After that, unraveling it becomes exponentially harder, even with a fraud claim. Lewis nodded. Given what we've just seen, the expired commission, the wrong phone number, we're willing to put a temporary internal hold on this file for 24 hours. But we need something official from your side within that time. If you can get us documentation, we can extend the hold, escalate internally, and loop in the buyer. Without it, he spread his hands. There's only so much we can do. 24 hours. One day to convince the machinery of multiple systems that the person their paperwork described wasn't me. Miss. Patel slid a printed checklist across the table, fraud affidavit form, contact details for the State Notary Commission, a note with the police department's real estate fraud division email. I gathered the papers like a lifeline. As I stepped back into the lobby, the bland art and quiet hum of the office felt different, like a set dressing for a play I hadn't agreed to be in. I clutched the checklist, pulled out my phone, and scrolled to the number for the state notary board the clerk had given me. By the time the glass doors slid shut behind me, I was already dialing, ready to see what would happen when the same system my parents had weaponized started looking at them instead of me. By the next morning, I was done hoping this would somehow resolve quietly. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open to the State Notary Commission's online portal, a folder of scanned documents ready. The cursor blinked in the reason for complaint box like it was daring me to say the words. I typed, alleged forged power of attorney used in real estate transaction, then attached everything. Copy of the POA, the notarization, the email from the title company flagging the expired commission date. My passport stamps and flight itinerary proving I'd been 12 hours ahead in another country when I supposedly signed in front of a local notary. Within an hour, my phone rang from an unfamiliar state number. "This is Mei Chen from the Notary Commission's investigative unit," a calm voice said. "I'm reviewing the complaint you just submitted." She walked me through their process with the same steady tone I'd heard from doctors explaining test results. "When we receive a forgery complaint," she said, "we audit the notary's commission record and their official logbook. If we find evidence of misconduct, we can refer the matter to the Attorney General and revoke their commission." I listened as she pulled up the notary's file on her end. "First issue," she said, almost immediately. "This notary's commission expired 3 months before the date on your POA. They should not have been notarizing anything at that time." A pause. "Second, I see prior complaints for improper identification procedures and failure to maintain proper records. This is not their first problem." She told me she would be requesting the original physical notary journal, the bound book, where every notarization was supposed to be logged with signatures or thumbprints. If my name wasn't there on the date in question, the whole POA would be hanging without a hook. In parallel, I went down another branch of the system. I walked into the precinct and filed a police report for identity theft and real estate fraud, dropping my folder on the detective's desk like I was handing over my entire life story in paper form. He flipped through the document slowly. "With real estate," he said, "we don't treat this lightly. We coordinate with the county recorder's office. In cases like this, they can freeze or flag transactions while we investigate, so nobody can claim they didn't know there was a dispute. By midday, the pieces were talking to each other." Ms. Chen emailed a formal notice to the title company and the county recorder, stating that the notarization appeared invalid and that an investigation into possible forgery was underway. The recorder responded by updating my property record from Lawasi TACTINPDNG to Lasi KED Vista Gayon with a bright warning flag DESPUDFADLGD. That single line gave the title company exactly what they needed: legal cover to halt the sale without being accused of breaching the buyer's contract. It didn't take long for the next move. The title company scheduled a conference call, the kind of virtual table where everyone pretends to be reasonable while their entire agenda crackles under the surface. On the invite, me, my parents, Lena, the buyer's attorney, Mr. Lewis from the title company, and Ms. Chen as an observer. I joined from a small conference room at work, door closed, my hands folded so I wouldn't clench them. When the call started, my parents' voices came through smooth, like they were auditioning for Concerned Parent of the Year. My mother went first. "We were only trying to help with Lena's crisis," she said, voice trembling in a way I'd seen melt people my entire life. "Our child travels so much, they said we could handle the paperwork, and now they're overwhelmed and scared. This must be a misunderstanding." My father followed with indignation dressed up as logic. "We did everything properly. We went to a notary. We answered the title company's call. We followed instructions. Our child verbally agreed to help their sister and now is backing out under pressure. That's what's really happening here." They painted me as a distant workaholic, someone who cared more about a penthouse than her own family. For a moment, there was that familiar fear that everyone on the line would believe them the way relatives always had. Then Mr. Lewis cleared his throat. His tone was neutral, almost clinical. "Let's go through the facts in the file," he said. "First, the power of attorney relies on a notarization from commission number X. The Notary Commission has confirmed that this commission expired months before the date on your document. An expired commission means any notarization using it is invalid." He clicked something on his end. I heard the faint rustle of pages. "Second, our internal records show that the verification call we made to confirm the POA went to a number listed as owner mobile. But that number has been identified as belonging to Mrs. Last Name, not to whom I name, the actual owner. At no point did our staff speak directly to me." He continued, steady as a metronome. "Third, We have compared My Name's genuine signature from the original purchase documents and ID to the signature on the POA. Our underwriting department has noted clear discrepancies in slant, pressure, and formation of specific letters. While we are not handwriting experts, this raises enough concern to question authenticity. There was a beat of silence. Then Ms. Chen spoke up. From the commission side, we have obtained the notary's official journal. There is no entry on the date in question for My Name or for any power of attorney related to this property. The seal impression on your document does not match the one on file for that notary's authorized stamp. Taken together, this strongly indicates that this notarization was not conducted in accordance with the law and may have been fabricated entirely. On the other end, my mother made a small gasping noise. My father tried to pivot. We trusted the notary, he said sharply. If they made mistakes, how is that our fault? The buyer's attorney cut in, no warmth in his voice. Regardless of who's at fault, my client will not proceed with a transaction tainted by suspected fraud. We are withdrawing from the purchase and reserving our right to pursue damages, if necessary, from any parties who initiated or misrepresented this deal. Lewis picked up from there. Given these findings, Harborline Title is canceling the scheduled closing. We will be filing a suspicious activity report with state regulators and permanently flagging this property so that no future transaction using a power of attorney can proceed without direct, in-person verification from My Name. The detective, who had joined silently by phone, spoke up then. His voice was matter of fact. Mr. and Mrs. Her last name. I need to inform you both that, based on the complaints and documentation received, a criminal investigation into attempted real estate fraud and identity theft has been opened. You may be contacted for interviews or receive subpoenas. I advise you to consider obtaining legal counsel. For the first time, their charm cracked. My father's tone sharpened into something raw and ugly. You're really doing this, he snapped at me. You're ruining your sister's life over some apartment. We were trying to save her. You'd let her end up on the street rather than sacrifice some square footage. I felt the familiar tug. Guilt, obligation, the urge to defend myself. I let it pass. When I spoke, my voice was steady. You didn't ask me to sacrifice. You tried to steal. You forged my name and used my identity to bail out someone who has burned every bridge she's had. That's not love. That's exploitation. There was a small silence, dense and final. I took a breath. For the record, I continued, knowing every word was being heard by people who actually took notes. I will be seeking a protective order preventing either of you from handling any of my financial or legal matters. I will also be permanently removing you and Lena as beneficiaries, emergency contacts, or decision makers in any of my accounts, policies, or estate documents. My mother started to cry. My father muttered something about betrayal. No one on the institutional side rushed to comfort them. When the call finally ended, the screen went back to my own reflection, faint in the dark monitor. The conference room around me felt larger and quieter than it had when I walked in. The sale was dead. My title was safe, at least for now. But as I sat there alone, hands flat on the table, I realized something else had died in that hour too. The last, thin illusion that my parents would ever draw the line at my survival. At night, the city glows like a circuit board outside my floor-to-ceiling windows. I sit on my own couch, in my own penthouse, the same space my parents tried to convert into cash, and it feels different now. Safer, yes, but lonelier too. On my laptop screen, the county recorder's portal shows my name next to the unit number with a fresh status COEAROWNR verify. Underneath, in bold, is a permanent note. PRI attempted, FOADO now PR SASBUIL she RSTO DUMR verification. It's strange how a single line on a screen can feel like a lock finally clicking shut in your favor. I didn't stop with that. I spent an afternoon going through every account I own. I changed every password, turned on two-factor authentication for banking and email, scrubbed any backup or recovery option that pointed to my parents' numbers or my mother's email. I sat with my lawyer and rewrote my will and medical directive, this time spelling it out. My parents and Lena are excluded from any decision. making roll or inheritance related to this property. I placed a credit freeze with all three bureaus and set fraud alerts, so any attempt to open something new in my name would ping me before it breathed. And then I wrote one last thing in email to my parents. Brief, factual, no accusations, no apologies. I laid out the boundaries. No financial involvement, no use of my name or documents, no surprise visits. From now on, any necessary communication in writing only. It wasn't triumph I felt when I hit send. Exactly, but something steadier. I am not their ATM or their collateral anymore. The detective emailed a week later. The notary is facing license revocation and possible charges. My parents, he said, may be charged or at least will carry a formal record of the investigation. Not what they wanted on their perfect family RA summe. Lena texted me after that, a long paragraph about how I'd destroyed the family, how I'd chosen a penthouse over blood. I took a screenshot, saved it with the rest of my documentation, and didn't reply. I've learned that sometimes the strongest response is a paper trail and silence. For years, my parents told me family was everything. By family, they meant my paycheck and my signature. They thought a forged power of attorney could erase me from my own home. In the end, it only erased their excuses. If you've ever felt like someone used the system against you, documents, HR complaints, property papers, or tried to financially exploit you in the name of family, you're not alone. If you like these kinds of toxic family and justice stories, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments which country you're watching from and what kind of story you want next. Job and HR drama, property fraud, or relationship smear campaigns.